Any doubts, any questions with respect to what we did in the last class regarding breadth first search? Okay. Okay, so anyway, there are about half the.
Sir,
Yeah.
remember I asked about the DFS thing. Is
What
it?
did you ask? I forgot.
I asked if we can do this bipartition using a DFS just by
Ah,
kind of going alternate. So I think I proved that just by saying that we can say that a bipartition is unique, and that can also be proved, I think, pretty simply. And then
yeah. When is the bipartition unique?
when the component is connected, when the graph is
Yeah,
connected.
when the graph is connected. Yes, good.
So if we
Yeah.
prove it for a connected graph, it can easily be extended for. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So if once we label a vertex one, then
Mm.
everything is actually it's fixed. So there's no
Mm.
other way of labeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why if we just label it alternatively, if we get
Mm.
a bipartition, then there exists one. Otherwise, there doesn't exist one.
How do you prove this?
Uh, that
So
the
if you get a
bipartition is unique.
bipartition, if it says yes, it is okay, right?
Yes,
So
sir. So
because
because a bipartition is unique, uh,
mm,
we have to when we go alternatively, we must if
no,
there
the thing
exists
is,
one, we must
if the
get it.
algorithm says yes, then what you say is correct, right? See, if the
Okay.
algorithm says that okay, I am able to color, you are giving colors, right? 1 and 2 to these vertices. So if I am able to color without any conflict, right? So if there is no 1 1 edge or say 2 2 edge, then you are fine. This the colors 1 and 2 form independent set and it is a bipartite graph. So what this proves is that if the algorithm says yes, then it is the graph is bipartite. Now, what about the other way around? So if the algorithm says no, then you need to exhibit an odd cycle, right? How do you do that? No, it is that part of the proof which is, yeah, a bit more involved. I mean, you need to still, yeah.
Okay. I thought it was enough to prove that the bipartition is unique. So once we
No, that is not right. No, we are giving an algorithm. See, you think of it in terms of an algorithm. We are giving an algorithm. So think of it like an adversary, right? So you are there and an adversary is there, right? So the adversary doesn't believe you, right? So whatever you say, he doesn't believe you. Fortunately, he understands some mathematical logic, right? Once you sort of prove to him correctly, only then he will believe you. So this is, suppose I given him an algorithm, I should say every step of it is correct. Or in other words, when the algorithm says yes, yeah, I should say that, yeah, the graph is definitely bipartite, right? So that is a bit more easier. So I will say that, see, I have colored it using colors 1 and 2, right? And in my whole process of coloring in this algorithm, I never got any conflict. Or in other words, there was never an edge between two vertices which were colored 1 or two vertices which were colored 2, right? So which means that if you take all the vertices colored 1, they are they form an independent set, and if we take all the vertices colored 2, they form an independent set. So we have two independent sets here. That is enough. That is exactly what we mean by a bipartite graph. So that direction is okay. But the other direction, suppose the algorithm says no, right? Then how do you prove that the graph is not bipartite, right? So once the algorithm says no, we should be able to exhibit an odd cycle, or you try to prove the other way around. If the graph is bipartite, the algorithm always says yes, right? So that is also something. Yeah, you can try to how the algorithm says yes or something like that, right? You should be able to tell that, right? Maybe, yeah, whatever property you said about the uniqueness is okay, but I don't know it is. Yeah, probably you can even use it to sort of, yeah, tell why this is true, right? So that is something that is required. Um, yeah, if you can show exhibit an odd cycle, nothing like it. That would be great, right? I think once there is a conflict, probably you should be also, yeah, since there are only back edges, right? Tree edges and back edges. Once there is a conflict, I think you should be able to show uh, an odd cycle. I don't think that is difficult. Okay. Yeah, think over it.
Okay.
So I just want, yeah, people to simply think over it. I mean, this will sort of see. It is not that yeah, we can solve everything in the class, but I want you guys to sort of think over, try. See, most of the things look pretty obvious. That, oh, okay, obviously this should be true. That is what we think, right? I mean, what is obvious to one is not obvious to another, and the way we use that term, or we think about obviousness itself, is something not, I mean, it is mathematically not correct, I would say, right? So most of the things, what intuitively what we feel correct might not even be true, right? I think even in discrete maths we have seen many things, right? So in that sense, yeah, the statements can cheat you a lot. So to overcome that, you should practice. You should practice to prove everything, every statement you have. That will sort of help you to understand every algorithm better. Okay. Okay, that's a good problem. That is why, I mean, if you understand the BFS proof, if you understand what DFS is doing, this you should be able to prove it. Maybe you might have to use a stronger statement or something like that, or property of DFS. I mean, with respect to the paths that it is generating, how the paths look, right? So once you sort of see it, I think it shouldn't be too difficult. Okay. So I think I have almost given you a hint. Yeah, just try to prove it formally. Okay, good. That's nice. Yeah, any other question? Okay. So let us continue with breadth first search. So in today's class, what we are going to see is one of the basic properties of breadth first search. I think this was sort of yeah, probably was one of the students, I think maybe Chaitanya or Dharmik, they tried to sort of use this property before, right? About breadth first search, giving the shortest distance from the source to any vertex, right? So that is what we are going to prove in today's class, right? So the lemma or theorem or property what we want to prove is BFS so in any BFS from a source, yes, the level of a vertex, say L of say V, gives the shortest path from S to V in the graph G. Right? So this is what we would like to sort of prove. So basically, whatever we are capturing as level, right? It gives us the shortest path, right? Gives the Actually, not the shortest path gives the length, right? Length of shortest path, right? From yes to V. So let us sort of instead of using this, we let us define something. So for any two vertices, say UV, let us define the distance as the length of the shortest path. The length of the shortest path from U to V, right? So we can sort of maybe denote it by dist of UV, right? So this is the length of the length of the length of a shortest path, right? So notice the use of the articles there, right? So I say the length because that length is unique, right? You can't have two integers for shortest path. It is unique. And I also use a shortest path because there can be many shortest paths in the graph, right? So it is the length of any of those shortest paths, right? Okay, so this is the property of this is exactly the property of breadth first search. Basically, breadth first search is used mainly to get shortest paths from source to any other vertex in an say uh, unweighted graph. Okay, the graph is unweighted, so this is something which we use to find it. Right. So any thoughts and as to how to prove this? Did you guys understand the statement? Right. We are talking about shortest paths in the graph, right? So from the source, right, we are saying that the shortest path to any vertex is basically equal to the level of that particular vertex, which we have indicated in the breadth first search. Now, does that seem to be true? Is the statement fine? So definitions, statements. So if there is any problem with the statement or anything we have defined till now, please let me know. I mean, this is important. And we sort of do this a lot of times. Okay. So the way we prove, the way we sort of, the kind of arguments we use is common to not only just algorithms on shortest paths, but also on some other things which use sort of similar strategies. Okay, so that's why I would like you guys to sort of concentrate on this, and because the idea of breadth first search, I mean the way the graph is explored sort of comes again in many other algorithms, at least two other algorithms which you are going to see later, right? Another one is just basically an extension of this, what you might have seen or called as the Dijkstra's algorithm for shortest path. Another one will be the minimum spanning tree algorithm. So they use something very similar, right? Even the code will look similar almost. Okay. So in that sense, I would want you guys to see how we are trying to prove this and what are all the considerations we do when we are trying to do this. Okay. Okay. So before going further, I would like to sort of see some properties of shortest paths. Right. I think in discrete math course also we have already seen some properties. Right. So we will try to sort of either recall it and also try to see if there are any new things which you can see. Suppose I have a shortest path, right, between U and V, and the graph is say unweighted. The graph is unweighted. The edges do not have any weights, right? So then, okay, this is a shortest path, right? between u and v. Now, so what did we see in discrete math course? Can there be an edge between two vertices in this path other than the edges in the path? Can there be an edge like this?
No, sir.
With lot of vertices here, right? So we have seen that there can't be an edge like this, right? The shortest path, right? If you take any shortest path, they are induced basically. All shortest paths are always induced, right? There can't be an edge like this, right? So which means that yeah, shortest paths are induced. Notice that we are only talking about unweighted graphs. Which is very important. Okay, we are talking about unweighted graphs. Okay. So this is what we saw in the discrete math course. Shortest paths are always induced. Okay. Now let us consider, say, two vertices. This is a shortest path. Let us consider two vertices x and y, right? In this shortest path. Can you say anything about the length of the path between x and y? Right? Suppose the path is p, so the path is upy. Now in this xpy, right, is a subpath of this path, right? It is a subpath. Now can you say anything about the length of this subpath with respect to the distance between x and y?
Shortest.
It will again be shortest.
Yes, sir.
Why? Why is it again shortest?
So if there exists another shortest path, then it will be a contradiction that u and the shortest path between x and y. U
If there
will
is,
yes.
yeah. So you are trying to prove by contradiction, is it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So suppose there exists another path which is shorter than this, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then
The path between u and y will be again shortest than this path, sir.
okay. So suppose there is a path xpy. Suppose there is another path, something like which starts from here. We don't know how it goes. Maybe it goes like this and comes back, right? So yeah. So then what you are saying is, so suppose this path is q, right? Now suppose the length of the path, right? So xpy, right, is one path. Suppose its length is strictly greater than the length of the path q, right? Xqy. Then what Karthik is saying is that you can always get a shorter path from u to v, right? So is that what you are saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you get a shorter path from u to v, right? So yeah, what is the shorter path?
Sir, x xqy. Then it will be contradiction that
So how do you go there? So you start from u,
x
upx, you go here, then
q,
xqy, right?
then
Then
yq, then
yp
v.
v, right? So he says that instead of the path between, suppose q is a shorter path, then you substitute it in between here, right? You will get a shorter path from u to v, which is a contradiction to our assumption that this path was the shortest path, right? So the length of this path will definitely be less than, right, upy length of this, sorry, upv, right? So so which is a contradiction to our assumption, right? So this is what is saying. So is this fine? Is the proof fine? Whatever Karthik Chandra said, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I
So
think in the top
mm,
you wrote UPY again by mistake
UPY.
instead of
Yeah, I
UP.
had written Y. I have written changed it to V. I changed it to V. Probably it is not visible. Yeah.
No, sir. The top, the first line that you've written.
UPX.
Above that, sir.
Which
You
one?
know,
UPY. Yeah. Here. Sorry. Yeah. Good. Thanks. Okay. So yeah. So is the proof whatever Karthik Chandra gave? Is that fine? Right. So yeah, what he says is that if there were a, by contradiction, if there were a shorter path Q from X to Y, instead of going in the path P from X to Y, you go in the path Q, right? And then this will be the sort of path, and that will have definitely distance shorter than what we have it in P, which is a contradiction to our assumption that this was the shortest path between U and V. So thereby our assumption should be wrong, right? So which means that our assumption that there existed a shorter path Q between X and Y is wrong, right? That is what I said. So is that fine? Okay. So yeah, the only everything is fine. The only problem is sort of here, right? So why is this a path? So that's why I also drew it that way. Why is this combination a path?
Sir,
It can be a walk, right? What if it goes and intersects here, right? This is a vertex it is intersecting, right? Then is it a path now?
So basically, the definition of y depends on that.
Yeah, the definition of X and Y are some two vertices we have taken. Right, we are not bothered about X and Y are any two vertices in this path.
So if Q intersects in the path UV,
Hmm.
then we can say that this path is never the shortest path. We can say that UPX and XQ and this point of intersection and this point of intersection to V will be shorter than the given path. So it is not possible to have Q that way.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I just want to sort of whatever Karthik Chandra said is almost correct, except for this pedantic case, right? But see, the what I want to bring to your notice is that there are sort of when we sort of prove, you need to prove it in such a way that you have considered every case, right? You have considered almost everything. This is one sort of I mean, such sort of instances are a pain, right? But you need to handle them. They are some sort of a degenerate case, right? You need to sort of handle them. Now, yeah, how do we write it so that we can handle such cases? Yeah, Dharmik, you are telling something. So can you sort of generalize that and say? If you want, you can even label these vertices. So whatever vertices you want, you can label these vertices wherever you get. How do we definitely know that this is a walk, right?
so we know the path will be a subset of this walk, right?
Wonderful, right? That is, if you do that also we can do. This we have already seen in discrete math course, right? So every walk contains a path, right? So yeah, that is one reason. Otherwise, I would have also could have also used different sort of you can use different notations and you can prove it. But I think you guys have seen this. If you have sort of forgotten it, I want you guys to go back and read it. Okay, I think we have proved in discrete math course that every walk contains a path, right? If this is a walk, right? So suppose this is a walk, then make it a path. You sort of, if it's a walk, then extract a path from it, right? So you extract a path from it, that path will anyway have anyway less number of edges. So the inequality will definitely hold, right? This inequality will still be true, right? And that will give us a contradiction. Okay. So it was, yeah, it is not too difficult actually. So in path Q, right, you will see, you need to see what is the first point of intersection with path Q. It might be X, or it might even come like this and go, right? So you need to see the first point of intersection and you need to see the last point of intersection, right? Towards the right of this path, right? You take those two paths, those 2 points, right? And using them, you sort of form the new path from this walk, right? So that is, yeah. So I have, yes.
But we can the XQY can be a path, right? But means it can't be a walk, right, sir? Like the XQY thing.
XQY is a path.
Yes, sir.
That is what we considered. XQY is a path. But when you take XQY with UPX and YPY, this can be a walk.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay. So,
Sir, why is it a walk? Why can't it have edges in common with the UPV? Like XQY and UPV can have some edges in common.
yeah, they can have, yeah, probably I should. The figure is not very generic. It is just an indicative one. I have not drawn all the cases. What Chaitanya said is also, initially I wanted to draw, then I forgot anyway. Good that you brought it up. So there can also be edges that are common to both these paths, right? So there can, and still it's a walk, right? So a walk can still have a lot of common edges also, right? So that is how we have defined walks, right? It can have common edges, common vertices, right? A trail is something which has only, which has distinct edges, right? Edges are not common, right? So edges are not repeated. But in a walk, the edges can also be repeated.
Yes.
Yeah, what Chaitanya said is also true. There can be edges which are common to both these things. And yeah, though Q and P are individual paths, right? When you combine them together, they can become walks, right? That's why I used walk and not trail. Trail is something where the edges are unique for each of them in the sense that edges are not repeated, right? Vertex can be repeated, but here this need not even be a trail. It can be a walk, right? So it just, there can be some edges, say this can sort of come like this and then come here, right? So it can sort of go in any sort of manner. Okay. So that's, I think we have considered all these cases when we were sort of discussing with respect to walks and paths in discrete math course, right? So otherwise also, yeah, whatever we sort of discussed now, if you go back and think over it, it is pretty much true. Okay. So is that fine? Okay. So what Karthik Chandra gave us was a walk, right? But from our experience with respect to discrete math course, we know how to extract a path from it. Once you extract a path from it, that path will also have length less than UPY, which is a contradiction to our assumption that the path P was a shortest path from U to V, right? So that's a contradiction, which means that some assumption we made should be wrong. The only assumption we made was there existed a shorter path Q rather than between X and Y other than XPY, right? So that was the only assumption, which means that assumption should be wrong, right? Which sort of proves that, so XPY is again a shortest path between X and Y. Okay. So it's a shortest path. So what we can, what this says is that this gives us what we call as it's a very important property. I mean, we will revisit this again and again throughout the course, even when we go to sort of complexity theory, something called as the shortest path property. It's a very important one. What this says is that shortest path always contain shortest subpaths, right? In any shortest path, the subpaths will again be shortest ones, right? So in simple words, shortest paths contain shortest subpaths. Right, sort of a local optimum also, right? When there is a global optimum, even locally it is optimum. So this sort of an optimization thing that happens with respect to every shortest path. If you take any shortest path, right? If you take any 2 points in that path, right? The path between them, right? With respect to the path we have considered is again the shortest. And one more thing is, notice that this is also true in weighted graphs, right? When you come to that, anyway, we will see it, but you can readily see that this is even if you put weights here, right? As long as the weights are positive, right, or non-negative, right? So even when the weights are non-negative, this property is true. Okay, shortest path always contain shortest subpaths. So this is one property we would like to sort of use again and again. So sort of an obvious, looks like obvious thing, and the proof is also not too difficult. Okay, so this is one thing I would like you guys to remember. So any questions on this? Okay, good. So I think we don't have too much time. Just to sort of brainstorm and stop. So how do we try to prove this lemma? So what this lemma says is that basically to sort of paraphrase in a different distance between SU for any vertex U is equal to, say, L of U, right? We wrote it as L of U or level of U, something like that. So this is what this lemma is saying, right? So the distance between S and U is equal to L of U, whatever we have captured in the algorithm. Right. Notice that the right hand part is with respect to the algorithm, right? So we need to argue with respect to basically how the algorithm sort of does this. So yeah,
Sir,
can we? How do we prove this?
like maybe by contradiction, sir, like we assume that there is a path with shorter length than L of U.
Okay. Then what direction will it be proving? So
But
yeah, the way you are trying to say now is already you are assuming one direction, right? So notice that this is an equality. So when we have an equality, what are the, how do we prove equalities?
So induction?
Yeah, we can, no, for the statement, we can try to
both,
use
both
induction.
sides, sir.
Both sides, right? Yeah,
both
we need
sides.
to, yeah. So what Shravani and Janman said, right? So we will try to sort of prove both these things, right? We will try to prove that distance of SU is less than or equal to L of U, and distance of SU is greater than or equal to L of U, right? So this is something we will try to prove, right? So or in other words, yeah, L of U is greater than or equal to distance of U, L of the U is less than or equal to distance of SU, right? So this distance of SU, we don't know what it is some quantity which is there in the graph. It is the property of the graph. that we are saying that property we are able to sort of obtain using the breadth first search. Okay. So in these two directions, is there some direction which is easier?
The first one, sir.
The first one is easier, is it, Adhyan? Why?
You can just follow the tree edges from U to back to S, and you can prove the first part. Because
okay, so one minute. Let me write. So you let say P be path from S to U, right? You say that the length of path P is definitely greater than or equal to distance of SU. So is this true? This is what you are saying, right, Adhyan?
yes, sir.
Yeah. Why? Why is this true?
So because we have defined distance as the length of the smallest path.
Okay, wonderful, right? This is so what Adhyan said is perfectly correct, right? So there is a path from the source to you, right? That is some path. We don't know whether it is shortest or not, right? That is some path between S and U. By the definition of distance, right? So distance is the length of the shortest path, right? In the graph from U to V, wherever it is, right? It is the shortest path. The shortest path should be at least, right? So the shortest path should be less than or equal to the length of any path between S and U. So P is some path between S and U. So its length should definitely be greater than or equal to the shortest path between S and U. That comes from the definition of the distance between S and U. Okay. So that is correct. What Adhyan proves the first direction, right? So by definition itself, the first direction is true. So what about the second direction? How do we prove it? So it is 9:40. I think I will stop it here, right? You might have the next class at 9:45, right? So I will stop it here. This is bit more involved, but not too difficult. I think most of you guys might already have the proof, right? So also Shravani gave an hint, right? So you can sort of go through that sort of a strategy and see if you can prove this, right? So yeah, go back to your, you are at your room. You don't have to go back to your room, right? So once your classes are finished, think back at it, right? So and try to see if you can prove this, right? Once we come tomorrow, we will try to prove this, right? And the proof itself is easy, not too difficult, but it is also very informative because we will use such kind of proofs a lot in future. Okay. So think about it and come back with a lot of ideas, lot of strategies, right? Lot of doubts in tomorrow's class. We will try to answer all of them. Okay. So is that fine?
Yes, sir.
So did everyone get the statements?